Everyone says they like you. They smile when you enter the room. They nod, they laugh. They tell you, "You're such a good person." But here's the truth Machiavelli would whisper if he stood beside you. They don't love you. They resent you. Behind every compliment hides comparison. Behind every handshake hides calculation. What you call friendship, they call strategy. Because in this world, no one truly celebrates your rise. They endure it. The moment you start shining brighter than the rest, every quiet insecurity you awaken in others begins to turn into silent hatred. Not the kind that attacks openly, the kind that claps for you in public and curses you in private. Niccolò Machiavelli warned that men love at their own convenience, but fear when it's in your power. What you mistake for affection is simply survival. You are not loved. You are tolerated. You are envied. You are feared. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you begin to see people for what they truly are, not allies, but players. And once you see the game, you can finally start to win it. You've been taught that kindness earns loyalty, that sincerity creates friends. But Machiavelli would call this a fatal illusion. Love, he wrote, is voluntary. Fear is enforced. Affection can be withdrawn in a heartbeat, but fear obeys even in silence. The smiles you receive are performances, the handshakes rehearsed, the praise rehearsed to disarm. The moment your light grows brighter than theirs, every hidden resentment begins to stir. This is not cruelty. It is the natural law of human ambition. You walk into a room and they greet you warmly, but behind every cordial glance flickers a quiet irritation. They see not who you are, but what you represent, proof that someone else has surpassed them. Their laughter masks unease, because in your presence, their own limitations come into focus. Even the smallest success unsettles the mediocre. A promotion, a new car, a confident tone. Each reminds them of what they lack. So they smile. They congratulate you. But inwardly they whisper, "Why him? Why not me?" Machiavelli observed that a prince's rise always breeds enemies among those once equal to him. The same is true today. When Jeff Bezos built Amazon, every traditional merchant despised him. When Elon Musk dared to move faster than governments, entire industries mocked him, until envy replaced disbelief. Greatness humiliates mediocrity merely by existing. The world may applaud your victories, but behind each clap lies a clenched fist. The rich man offends the poor simply by being rich. The wise man insults the foolish by speaking truth. The confident man is despised for revealing another's timidity. You need not attack anyone to make enemies. You only have to stand taller. Consider the Roman Senate that smiled at Caesar as they plotted his death. They bowed as they sharpened their blades. His fault was not tyranny, it was triumph. Alexander was hated, not for cruelty, but for being too exceptional. Even prophets and visionaries drew hatred for exposing others' moral poverty. If history's giants could not escape envy, what chance does an ordinary man have? Gratitude, Machiavelli warned, is a fleeting sentiment among men who pursue advantage. They will love you while you serve their needs, when your presence brings benefit or protection. But the instant you are no longer useful, affection evaporates like mist in the morning sun. And here lies the trap. You believe that kindness shields you, that generosity buys goodwill. Yet every gift contains hierarchy. The giver stands above the receiver, and men resent being beneath another. Help someone often enough, and he will soon hate you for reminding him of his dependence. Charity wounds pride. Fairness exposes inequality. Your very decency becomes an affront. Machiavelli saw this among princes who rewarded subjects too freely. They bred greed, not loyalty. Modern leaders make the same mistake when they try to please everyone. It invites contempt, not devotion. So do not be shocked when your good deeds breed bitterness. The more virtuous you appear, the more others will search for hidden motives. Even your friends may wish secretly for your stumble, because it will restore their sense of balance. Hatred, Machiavelli wrote, is born from fear of another's virtue as much as from his power. To be exceptional is to awaken that fear in others. And the higher you climb, the more intense it becomes. Understand this. Love, as society defines it, is a fragile bargain. It lasts only as long as it benefits both sides. Hatred, however, is pure. It requires no reason, no logic, no fairness. It endures where gratitude fades. The man who recognizes this does not seek affection. He seeks strength. He studies envy not as poison, but as proof. Proof that he has become visible in a world where most are ignored. And from that proof, he begins to build his power. Because when you finally see that the smiles around you are masks, you stop trying to please them. You start learning how to use them. And this is where Machiavelli's second lesson begins. Behind every smile, every compliment, every loyal vow lies strategy. You must learn to see through it, to play the same game better than they do. Because once you can read the mask, you will never again be its victim. Once you understand that love is a costume, you begin to see the stage for what it truly is. Society is a grand theater of actors performing devotion to whoever holds power at the moment. Machiavelli observed that men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers. And that loyalty survives only as long as it profits them. He was not condemning humanity. He was diagnosing it. What he revealed in the courts of Florence still governs every office, friendship, and alliance today. People pretend allegiance because open hatred is too expensive. Watch carefully, and you'll see how this theater unfolds. The flatterer praises you not because he admires you, but because proximity to you gives him advantage. The coworker who smiles at your success might be calculating how to use your shine to reflect on himself. The so-called friend who calls himself your brother rehearses every word to secure safety within your circle until the moment he can climb above it. This is the same dance courtiers performed before princes, kneeling, smiling, promising eternal loyalty, while secretly dreaming of replacing the hand they kiss. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler should trust few and be feared by many. For familiarity breeds contempt and power invites imitation. The same applies in modern life. The more open you are, the more people will study you, mimic you, and eventually use what they learn against you. Consider corporate history. Steve Jobs was surrounded by those who praised his genius. Yet many of them later competed to steal his ideas once they had absorbed his methods. Their praise was camouflage. Their smiles were shields for ambition. In every era, the courtier evolves, but never disappears. He just wears a different suit. The truth is, masks exist because they are useful. Open hostility would ruin the game. A rival who despises you cannot strike if you believe he loves you. So he conceals his intent behind courtesy. Machiavelli compared this to the fox in the forest, unseen, silent, dangerous. A lesson many powerful men ignored until it was too late. Caesar trusted Brutus because Brutus acted the loyal son. CEOs trust partners who speak in the language of friendship while collecting leverage behind closed doors. The modern fox posts congratulations on your success while quietly undermining you in private messages and meetings. Even kindness becomes strategy. When someone flatters you, remember, flattery is not affection, it is reconnaissance. They seek access, not connection. They praise you to relax your guard because a relaxed man reveals information, and information is currency. The moment they possess enough, they no longer need the disguise. As Machiavelli warned, he who builds his security on the loyalty of men builds on air. Loyalty bought by emotion evaporates when ambition calls for treason. Think of the pattern. The closer a person stands beside you, the more power your downfall would give them. History repeats this endlessly. Kings betrayed by generals who swore brotherhood. Politicians destroyed by advisors who once carried their banners. Tech founders ousted by partners they raised from nothing. Betrayal rarely comes from enemies outside your walls. It comes from those who helped you build them. The neighbor, the friend, the colleague. These are the daggers hidden beneath the cloak. And yet, you cannot live without masks. The wise do not reject them. They learn to wear one of their own. Machiavelli advised that a prince must appear merciful, faithful, humane, sincere, religious, and also be ready to act otherwise when necessity commands. The goal is not honesty, but advantage. The fox survives not by baring teeth, but by mastering disguise. In your world, that means appearing approachable while remaining unreadable, friendly but untrusting, generous but watchful. Let others believe in your warmth. Beneath it, keep your calculations cold. Because when you reveal that you see through the act, when you let the mask slip, people panic. They cannot manipulate the man who studies them. And from that fear, respect begins to form. The moment you stop playing their game blindly and start controlling the stage, you become unpredictable. And unpredictable men are dangerous. But there is a darker truth still. The mask itself is only a symptom of something deeper. Resentment born not from betrayal, but from your power. Even when you harm no one, your success alone provokes silent rebellion. And it is this hidden emotion, resentment, that fuels hatred more than deceit ever could. Power, in any form, is a mirror. It reflects not only your strength, but the weakness of others. And men cannot forgive what reminds them of their inferiority. Machiavelli wrote, "There is no avoiding war. It can only be postponed to the advantage of others." In the same way, there is no avoiding resentment. It merely sleeps, waiting for the moment when your success becomes too loud to ignore. Every advantage, wealth, status, intellect, beauty, influence, casts a shadow of resentment. The man who walks into a room commanding attention humiliates those who are ignored. The entrepreneur who builds an empire quietly becomes a target for those who failed to build their own. Even in the smallest circles, this law governs everything. The student who earns top marks, the employee who gets promoted, the man admired by women, all awaken silent bitterness in the hearts of their peers. It is the invisible toll of distinction. The price of standing above the crowd is feeling the crowd's hatred beneath your feet. In Florence, Machiavelli watched nobles pretend friendship toward those who rose too quickly. They smiled as they plotted to bring them back down. He warned that men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. In today's terms, this means people will forgive your mistakes before they forgive your success. When you make progress, you steal from others the illusion of equality, and nothing wounds the ego more deeply than realizing it cannot keep pace. Consider the modern world's quiet elite. The billionaires who live modestly, avoiding luxury brands and public display, do so not out of humility, but strategy. They understand Machiavelli's oldest rule: never provoke envy unnecessarily. One should avoid being hated, he wrote, as one avoids ruin. The rich who flaunt their wealth invite attacks. The powerful who boast about their victories awaken resentment in those they must still rule. True power moves invisibly, disguised as ordinariness, precisely because attention multiplies enemies. Even admiration is dangerous. It is rarely pure. What the world calls admiration is often admiration poisoned by envy, a forced smile masking humiliation. The subordinate praises the leader's skill while secretly wishing for his failure. The friend applauds your fortune, but counts what he lacks while doing so. The rival shakes your hand while imagining your downfall. Their obedience is not love, it is necessity. They follow because they must, not because they wish to. And when the balance of fear and respect tilts too far toward resentment, they will strike the moment it becomes safe to do so. Look at history. Caesar was murdered not by his open enemies, but by senators who owed him their positions. Napoleon was adored by his soldiers, but despised by the kings whose kingdoms he outshone. In every age, success has drawn hatred like fire draws shadows. The higher you rise, the more the air thins, not from altitude, but from isolation. For power creates distance, and distance breeds misunderstanding. Even those who once cheered your ascent begin to resent the light that blinds them. Your strength becomes an insult to their mediocrity. This is why a wise man measures admiration with suspicion. When people praise you too easily, it means they have begun to envy you in silence. When they agree with everything you say, they are preparing for the day they will disagree fatally. Their applause is not affection. It is camouflage. Machiavelli warned princes to beware of those who come too willingly, because eagerness is rarely innocent. In modern life, this truth applies to investors who suddenly want to partner, friends who want to collaborate, and colleagues who believe in your vision. Each word of loyalty carries an agenda. Even in love, the same law holds. A partner may begin in admiration, but turn resentful when your independence grows. When one person's ambition outpaces the others, admiration decays into fear of abandonment, then into hostility. Power does not only test politics, it tests intimacy. The closer someone stands to your flame, the more likely they are to burn from its heat. And yet, you cannot dim your fire to make others comfortable. You cannot apologize for the shadow your light creates. To do so is to betray the very strength that made you visible. Machiavelli taught that a prince must learn to be both fox and lion, cunning enough to anticipate hatred, strong enough to survive it. The goal is not to be loved, nor even to avoid being hated, but to endure resentment without letting it cripple your judgment. For resentment is the natural tax on significance. So remember this: every nod, every compliment, every gentle smile conceals a calculation. Every man who praises you imagines how your fall might serve his ascent. To rise is to be hated, and to be hated is proof that you have risen. But if love cannot be trusted and admiration is tainted by envy, then what foundation remains for power to stand on? What emotion endures when affection fails? Machiavelli answered this question 5 centuries ago, and the world has proven him right ever since. Fear endures. It is much safer to be feared than loved, he wrote, if you cannot be both. Love is a fragile fabric woven from pleasure and gratitude. The moment it stops benefiting someone, it tears. Fear, however, is carved into the human nervous system. It needs no reason, no kindness, no reward. It commands loyalty where affection cannot. But this is not an argument for cruelty, only for realism. The wise ruler understands that unrestrained terror breeds rebellion. He does not humiliate needlessly. He frightens strategically. The goal is not to make men suffer, but to make them hesitate. Machiavelli compared this to holding a sword sheathed in silk, visible enough to remind others of its edge, but concealed enough not to provoke desperation. Those who ruled by kindness alone, he warned, were devoured when fortune turned against them. Their subjects cheered them in prosperity and deserted them in danger. The man who seeks love as protection will find it vanishes when he needs it most. History never tires of proving this truth. Caesar sought affection and was stabbed by those who swore loyalty. Louis XV tried generosity and was guillotined by the people he fed. Leaders who built their empires on admiration collapsed the moment fear disappeared. Meanwhile, those who balanced awe with firmness, rulers like Augustus, Lee Kuan Yew, or even modern CEOs who enforced discipline with quiet authority, endured. Fear, when tempered with respect, does not breed hatred. It breeds order. The same principle applies beyond politics. In every company, friendship-based leadership decays. Employees who love a soft leader will exploit his leniency until the system corrodes. But when that same leader enforces clear consequences, admiration turns into stability. In relationships, too, unguarded affection invites complacency. A man who never enforces boundaries will be tested endlessly. The one who commands respect through calm strength is rarely challenged. As Machiavelli put it, men have less hesitation in offending one who makes himself loved than one who makes himself feared. Fear requires no maintenance. Love demands constant feeding, gifts, approval, explanations. Fear is economical. It sustains itself through memory. A single moment of decisive strength can enforce years of obedience. Consider Alexander, who executed traitors swiftly, yet honored loyalty publicly. The fear of his wrath and the respect for his vision made his army unstoppable. Contrast that with modern politicians or influencers desperate to be liked. They dilute their power with apology until no one listens. Affection without authority is impotence dressed as virtue. Still, fear alone is dangerous. A man feared but not respected plants the seeds of revenge. Machiavelli warned that cruelty without wisdom sharpens daggers in the dark. The key is balance, fear joined with awe. When men fear your strength but respect your fairness, they hesitate. They do not plot because they cannot justify rebellion against competence. You must make them see that defiance is not only dangerous, but foolish. And what of hatred? Should you resist it? No, you should master it. Hatred is not a curse. It is a compass. It points toward your influence. Those who matter least are ignored. Those who matter most are resented. Hatred is the echo of your significance. To be hated by the weak is to be measured by their insecurity. To be hated by the corrupt is to be honored by their fear. Machiavelli advised princes to accept hostility as proof of consequence, just as fire proves the presence of heat. You cannot rise without friction. You cannot command without resistance. You cannot lead without enemies. Even virtue summons opposition. The honest man is despised by liars. The generous are envied by the greedy. The disciplined irritate the lazy. A world built on self-interest cannot adore integrity for long. It will crucify it when it becomes inconvenient. So do not waste energy begging for universal affection. It does not exist. To try to please all is to end up despised by all. For in giving to one, you must deny another. A man who dares to stand for something must accept that others will stand against him. Understand this. Enemies are not evidence of failure. They are proof that you have disturbed the world's comfort. They are the shadow of your movement, the noise of your presence. When they attack, it means you are visible. When they envy, it means you are winning. Every man who ever built something lasting learned to carry hatred like armor. Caesar wore it. Socrates drank it. Christ bore it. And still, their names endure because they chose power over peace, truth over comfort, legacy over popularity. So, when you feel the sting of contempt or the silence of envy, remember, it is not rejection, it is recognition. It means you have weight. It means your existence forces others to confront their own insignificance. Do not fight hatred with apologies. Transform it into gravity. Let it remind you that you are no longer invisible. As Machiavelli would say, fortune favors the bold, but only wisdom preserves the bold from ruin. Therefore, do not fear being feared. Fear being forgotten. For love is fleeting, but power remembered, that endures beyond death. Hatred is the price of significance, but mastery of hatred is the price of greatness.